There never a team from Fayetteville or Hope Mills entered in the Little League World Series tournament. It took a major league effort, but we finally came up with an answer that is somewhat of a double play. In other words, there's two reasons. First, the Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and Hope Mills Recreation Departments don't participate in the Little League organization. As a result, Team C dubbed the athletic supervisor for the town's recreation department. That organization sponsors its tournaments. Second, even though it is country, 8 teams from the United States and 8 international teams reach Williamsport. The winners of the United States bracket and the international bracket play in the final. This year, a North Carolina team from Greenville made it for a telephone support group at 10:30 a.m. to noon to join the discussion. Call 800-582-3014, and the facilitator is Joseph Peters. The passcode is 088-457-128 #. The Heart Community Recovery Program is at 7 to 8 p.m. tonight at 138 North Main Street, Rayford. Drug and alcohol dependence. The number is 848-1872. Alcoholic Anonymous groups are in various locations, 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Campground United Methodist Church Education Building, 2nd floor. 7 and 10 a.m. noon, 5:30, 8, and 11 p.m. 626 Sandalwood Drive. At noon at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church. 7 p.m. at 231 West Martin Luther King Street, Maxton. 6 p.m. Carolina Manor, 110 Pine Run Drive, Lumberton. 10 a.m., noon, 5:30, and 8 p.m. at 604 German Street. 6:30 p.m. Hermitage Retirement Center, 550 Bailey Road, Lumberton. At 8 p.m., 333 Holly Lane. Also at 8 p.m., Burnt Swap Baptist Association, 4050 Prospect Road, Pembroke, 8 p.m., and Calvary Baptist Church at 8 p.m. Al-Anon meets at 8 p.m., Quartermaster and Logistics, Fort Bragg, and that number is 261-2751. The Fayetteville Area Parkinson Supports Group is at 10 a.m. at Kiwanis Recreation Center at 325 Devers Street. The Secret Place Single Mothers Outreach, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Destiny Now World Outreach Center, 2569 Owen Drive. Free child care with RSVP for ages 2 to 12. That telephone number is 920-7090. And Mothers with Children Behind Bars, Saturday 4 p.m., 707 Murkison Road. Ramona is the contact at 910-977-6282. It meets each second Saturday. And the public safety report is Mia McConnell of the 1900 block of Powell Street was charged Friday with larceny and misdemeanor larceny. Bail was set at $1,500. Sharika Everett, 30 of the 1900 block of Sapona Road, was charged Friday with failure to report the disappearance of a child. Bail was set at $1,500. Heather Nicole Ratley, 26 of the 1900 block of Catawba Street, was charged Friday with obtaining property by false pretense, breaking and entering, larceny, after breaking and entering and possession of stolen property. Bail was set at $7,500. And Julia Raw Escalera, 30, of the 7700 block of Sweetwater Road in Dunn, was charged Thursday with fraud by false pretense or trickery, conspiracy and misdemeanor, second-degree trespassing, and bail was set at $2,000.
Okay, let's turn to items of local interest. The political candidate forums have been set. This article is about that. Voters in Fayetteville will have the opportunity to hear from candidates for mayor and city council during several upcoming forums. The Fayetteville Observer, along with the Greater Fayetteville Chamber and Long Leaf Pine Realtors, will host forums Monday and Tuesday at Fayetteville Technical Community College. Each forum will run from 6:30 to 8:30 in the Tony Rand Student Center. Doors open at 6 p.m. The candidates for mayor will attend each session, but the candidates for the city council district stage. Followers on Facebook and in the audience at FTCC may pose questions to the candidates. Two-term incumbent Nat Robertson is being challenged for mayor by Mitch Colvin, the mayor pro tem who was first elected to the city council in 2013. The candidates for city council are District 1, Kathy Jensen and Curtis Brown, District 2, Dan Culleton and Tyrone Williams, District 3, Tisha Waddell and Jeremy Wright, District 4, Chalmers McDougall and DJ Hare, District 5, Johnny Dawkins and Henry Tyson, District 6, Bill Crisp and Tony Stewart, District 7, Larry Wright and John McNeil, District 8, Ted Moon and John Miner. On Sunday, the Fayetteville branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the H. Con J Local People's Assembly, and the Cumberland County Public Library will host a forum from 2:30 to 5 at the North Regional Location. For more information, call 672-1474. In a related article, Kirk DeVere has endorsed Mitch Colvin in the mayor's race. Fayetteville Councilman Kirk DeVere, who finished third in Tuesday's mayoral primary, has endorsed Mayor Pro Tem Mitch Colvin. In a statement Friday, DeVere congratulated Colvin and Mayor Robertson on their primary wins, which put them on the November 7th ballot. I encourage my supporters and others to stand with Mitch and elect him as the next mayor of our city, DeVere said. Colvin's vision for Fayetteville is similar to DeVere's, the statement said. I believe he will be a champion for those who currently do not have a voice, and that he will fight to reduce the inequalities that divide us as a city. Colvin, a two-term councilman, has a plan to address priorities such as job creation, violent crime, the needs of the city's workforce, and Hurricane Matthew recovery. Through our discussion, I feel that he will make our neighborhoods a priority and create a plan to address the needs of many of our older neighborhoods. Mitch has given me his word that he will ensure we rebuild our relationship with the military and bring forward policies and plans that will take care of our veterans, our active military, and their families. In 2013, DeVere endorsed Robertson after losing in the mayoral primary. Robertson was on the ballot with then-Councilman Val Applewhite. Robertson defeated Applewhite by a slim margin in the general election. He defeated her again for a second term in 2015. Another article that I think will be of interest to many of you is about Social Security benefits for next year. Millions of Social Security recipients and other retirees will get a 2% increase in benefits next year. This is the largest increase since 2012, though it comes to only $25 a month from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Advocates for seniors claim the
legislatures would return and vote to override. The measure approved last week in Large Raven gave Cubu family house in Chapel Hill serving in Paraguay in 2012 when he was diagnosed. Tim Sellers is one of those patients. Things are Martha Aldridge expansion that will add 35 rooms. They do a lot for this community, as our county is one of the major sources that uses it. a rare blood disease, Tim Seller says. I had a stem cell transplant. Family house, Corbin said, was there for him and his family. It was my sanctuary. SECU House has taken care of us in amazing ways.
Okay, another healthcare related article. The long-term effects of President Donald Trump's executive order to cut federal insurance subsidies for many remain uncertain. The health experts say it will result in far fewer insured families in the Cape Fear region in the future. More than 90% of the in-state individuals and families who count on federal subsidies to help pay for insurance under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, will lose their subsidies. On Thursday, Trump signed an order that ended those subsidies to insurance companies. The number of people affected won't be known until the upcoming 2018 sign-up period ends in mid-December, but Chris Ray said he expects the number to be substantial. Ray is the interim executive director of Cumberland Health Net, a local healthcare nonprofit organization. You're talking about people who were unable to afford health care before the ACA took effect. He said, some were the working poor, some were elderly or single moms. They are all on the fringe of coverage. This change may push as many as 90 rural health research program. Nearly half of the people eligible for the ACA enrolled. Overall, North Carolina ranks 4th nationally in the number of people under ACA enrollment, behind California, Texas, and Florida. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that as of spring 2017, North Carolina had 500,000 people enrolled under ACA, with 93% receiving some. See any additional premium increases for the Cape Fear region. Blue Cross insurance companies are contractually bound to provide the subsidies for the next year. The same. We prepared for the possibility that premiums would need to cover the extra claims costs when we requested our order will not take effect for several months, and that's assuming legal challenges don't drag it through the courts. It has no effect on the insured poor, people who are employed but unable to purchase back to where we were. More than anything, I'm disappointed that our lawmakers. Some other various local articles. This one from Maysville, South. Dayon Green of Leland, North Carolina, and 20-year-old Brandon Munoz of Baltimore. All were charged with trespassing malicious house of worship envelope to the Water Analysis Department at a post office box in Raleigh. The Attorney General's office said residents. The claims, which are promoted through mailings, flyers, and door-to-door solicitations, are highly hospital in Virginia. Hospital spokesman Peter Singenberger said via email. He said 11 others injured in. Chief State Employee Union said North Carolina prisons are understaffed, guards and other employees are attacked regularly, and legislators should reverse dangerous conditions by hiring more officers. Correctional officers' safety issues have been ignored despite an assault every 8 hours, and we pray someone in power will finally care enough to do something, said in manpower, to ensure that they return home safely.
Such legislation. He would once again state his love for America. It premiered in Fayetteville on Friday at the Cameo Art House Theater. The documentary traces the life and career of Fayetteville. It was a way to connect with residents and soldiers living around the country's largest military installation. Experience, she said. Among all the conflict and the pain and the grief that he saw, he was able to find those moments that human experience would on the campus newspaper The Technician while they were students at North Carolina State University. She knew her son's images have received distinguished honor.
GOP denial about Trump has generally taken Ryan's form. The president may be eccentric and divisive, but Republicans need to keep their given public demonstration. They reveal a president raging against enemies, obsessed by slight state, who apparently regards his boss as a moron. It was once urged, literally, depends on the president being some wise, strategic, restraintful, and moral duty to state them in public. If Corker is correct, many of his colleagues do have such fears. Their silence is deafening and damning. Brave men are all vertebrates, said G.K. Chesterton. They have their softness on the surface and their toughness in the middle. But these modern cowards are all crustaceans. Their hardness is all over the cover and their softness is inside. Sub-districts within almost all urban counties. Why? Proponents talk a lot about fair representation, but that's a smokescreen. The only reason, is to elect more Republicans to the bench. All of this debate misses the larger question. Why should judges be elected? Election proponents talk as if they think judges should follow the will of the people. To the contrary, the duty of a judge is to the law and the Constitution, not public opinion. Sometimes the right decision is not the popular one. Presumably, under an appointed system, a nominations commission would present to the governor a list of names, ideally no more than 3, from which the government would appoint the judge. There could be retention elections under which the judge's name would appear on the ballot alone, and voters would decide on a new term. The key to making a merit selection system work is in keeping the nominations commission from being political itself. All this talk about judicial reform gives members of the General Assembly a chance to start moving toward real reform. Will they? And from the Winston-Salem Journal, on a lawsuit settlement that ensures the public won't pay a large cost for inspecting state departmental documents. Score another victory for accountability. A settlement announced last week ensures that the public won't be required to pay big costs to inspect our state's departmental documents. The Waterkeeper Alliance, a nonprofit that fights for clean water, wanted to inspect documents from the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services related to the agency's oversight of animal agricultural operations flooded by major hurricanes. The department tried to charge the Alliance more than $4,000 to inspect the documents, according to a press release from the Alliance and the Southern Environmental Law Center. With the settlement, the department agreed to make all the documents available for inspection at no charge and to reimburse the Waterkeeper Alliance for litigation costs, according to the press release. The department has also agreed to update its Public Records Act policy so it will no longer charge fees for the inspection of public records. The change was sorely needed. Good for this win on access to records that belong to us all. Transparency is always the best policy. Okay, we're almost at the top of the hour. This is the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service. We are a United Way partner agency. We're broadcasting here from the campus of Fayetteville State University using the UNC Chapel Hill system signal. We are a nonprofit agency. We need your support. Hope you will consider making donations and encouraging others to do so. Sending those to P.O. Box 35029 here in Fayetteville 28303. As always, you can call the office here with any questions at 910-672-1600. Again, your readers this morning are Stuart and Beth Walters. We're glad to be with you this morning. We're right at the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and move to reading today's obituaries. From the late death notices from Cumberland County, Jonathan Mott, 34 of Hope Mills, Bowles St. Paul's Funeral Home. Jesse L. Batt, 75 of Fayetteville Colvin Funeral Home. From the Cape Fear region, Rosalia Santos Marino, 87 of Ashland, Massachusetts, formerly of Fayetteville, Rogers and Breese. Jeanette W. Sexton, 90 of Lillington, O'Quinn Peebles Funeral Home. John F. DeWolf, 87 of Hillsborough, Ohio, formerly of Cameron, Adcock Funeral Home. Franklin Jack Poe, 75 of Laurinburg, McFadder Funeral Home. Juanita Smith, 96 of Carborough, formerly of Fayetteville, Jernigan Warren. Alfredo Ramirez Barona, 58 of Red Springs, Buey Funeral Home. And for the obituaries, Miss Alani Renee Ebron passed away unexpectedly in Fayetteville on October 10th of 2017. Visitation will be held Sunday, October 15th from 11 to 1 at Colvin Funeral Home. and a graveside service will follow at 2 p.m. at Rockfish Memorial Park. Donald R. Spanky Carter Jr., 45, passed away Monday, October 2nd. Funeral service will be held 3 p.m. Sunday, October 15th at Butler Funeral Home Chapel by Pastor Barry Helms. Burial will follow in Bladen Memorial Gardens in Elizabethtown, and that's Butler Funeral Home. Vivian Lee Side, 74, of Whispering Pines, died Wednesday, October 11th. There will be a graveside Sunday at 3 p.m. at Ashley Heights Baptist Church Cemetery, Bowles Funeral Home, Southern Pines. Colleen Ivy Clyde, 85, of Raleigh, died Monday, October 9th. The memorial is Saturday at noon, Stephen L. Lyons Funeral Chapel in Raleigh. The burial is at Loudon Park Cemetery in Baltimore, Maryland. That's Unity Funeral Services. Roy Lee Getty, 69, of Lillington, died Monday, October 9th. The funeral is Monday at 11 a.m. at Weissman Mortuary Chapel. The viewing is Sunday from 2 to 6. The burial is at Refuge Community Church Cemetery, and that's Weissman Mortuary. Adrienne A. Courtney, 73, of Fayetteville, passed away on Wednesday, October 11th. Memorial service will be held at 3 p.m. Sunday, October 15th, Rogers and Breach Funeral Home Chapel. The family will receive friends from 2:30 to 3 prior to the service at the funeral home. And that's Rogers and Breach. Jeremiah J.W. Johnson, 39, of Bun Level, died Wednesday, October 4th. The funeral is Thursday at 3 p.m. at Jerningham Warren Chapel. The visitation is at Jerningham Warren Funeral Home Thursday from 1 to 3. Carl Q., 87, of Roberts Grove Road in Dunn, died Wednesday, October 11th. The funeral is Sunday at 2:30 at Roberts Grove Original Free Will Baptist Church. The visitation is at Cromartie Miller Funeral Home in Dunn. Visitation is at Cromartie Miller in Dunn Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. and the burial is at Roberts Grove Church Cemetery. And that's Cromartie Miller Funeral Services. Retired Staff Sergeant Kenneth Austin, 64, of Fayetteville, died Saturday, October 7th. His funeral is Monday at 4 p.m. at Rogers and Breach Funeral Home Chapel. The visitation is at Rogers and Breach from 1:45 to 3:45 prior to the service. The burial is at the National Veterans Cemetery in Salisbury on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Sue Hope Edgerton, 89, of of Lumberton, died Friday, October 13th. The funeral is Sunday at 2 p.m. at the Floyd Memorial Chapel in Lumberton. The visitation is at Floyd Mortuary in Lumberton Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. The burial is at Gardens of Faith Cemetery. Miss Martha Tilcade, 45, of Fayetteville, died Thursday, October 12th. Her funeral is Tuesday at 11 a.m. at McPherson Presbyterian Church. The visitation is Monday evening at Jerningham Warren from 6 to 8, and the burial is in the church cemetery. Betty Lou Powell Memory, 87, of Whiteville, died Friday, October 13th. The funeral is Monday at 2 p.m. at the Whiteville First Baptist Church. Visitations is at First Baptist Church Parlor Monday 1 to 1:30. The burial is in Whiteville Memorial Cemetery, and that's McKenzie Mortuary Service. Mr. Paul Wright Killian of Lumberton died Thursday, October 12th. The funeral is Sunday at 4 at First Presbyterian Church in Lumberton. Visitation is at the church from 3 to 4 p.m. The burial is at Greenlawn Memorial Park, Bowles Biggs Funeral Home. Clarissa Chris Odom, 76, of Fayetteville, died Sunday, October 8th. Her memorial is Monday at 11 a.m. at First Presbyterian Church. The visitation is at the church from 10 to 11, and that's Sullivan's Highland Funeral Service. Mrs. Philomen Casimir, 96, of Fayetteville, died Wednesday, October 4th. That funeral is Monday at 1 p.m. at St. Patrick Catholic Church. The visitation is at Colvin Funeral Home Sunday 4 to 7. The burial is at Northside Cemetery. Mr. David Joseph Manning of Fayetteville died Monday, October 9th. The graveside is Sunday at 1 p.m. Northside Cemetery. The burial is at Northside Cemetery, and that's Calvin Funeral Home. Katrina Darius Jones, 47, of Fayetteville, died Sunday, October 8th. The funeral is Sunday at noon, St. Matthew's Church of God in Rayford. The viewing is at Bowie Funeral Home Saturday from 1 to 7. The burial is in the church cemetery, and that is Bowie Funeral Home.
The next article is from the opinion page by Sarah Hirsch, who's president and CEO of the Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina. We commend the Fayetteville Observer and reporter Greg Barnes for educating and inspiring the community to confront the crises in the child welfare system in the series Deaths Point to Crisis in the Child Welfare System. It is going to take the entire community to change the way we support and strengthen families so that our children can thrive and grow to become productive, healthy, contributing citizens. We attended the community forum on September 28th and were impressed with the high level of engagement in Cumberland County. The series started with the focus on child fatalities in the child welfare system, but it clearly showed that the issue is not a child welfare issue alone. It is a child development issue. It is a public health issue. It is an education system issue. It is a criminal justice system issue. It is a future workforce issue. It is an economic development issue. It is a finance issue. Prevention of child fatalities, abuse, and neglect is a community issue. It is our collective responsibility. It's an issue that impacts everyone. Prevention is about all of us. The effects of child maltreatment cost North Carolina over $2 billion every year in downstream expenses in our educational, criminal justice, social services, and health care systems. Early childhood has been identified as the most important intervention stage to help children develop their greatest potential. To develop a world-class working force for the future, we must rethink our investments in children and families with a focus on economic, social, health, and educational outcomes. We know it is the right thing to do and has a great return on investment. The SOAR Committee, Strengthening Families, Providing Optimal Child Development, and Reduced Child Neglect in Cumberland County, has been and will continue to be a catalyst for the critical work of positioning Cumberland County to proactively invest in prevention. The SOAR Committee's vision is a stable community where children and families can thrive. The committee aims to educate, empower, and support families so that they can provide nurturing homes for their children. With guidance and technical assistance from Prevent Child Abuse NC, they developed North Carolina's first community child abuse prevention plan to be presented to the Board of County Commissioners in November. The plan was developed using a collective impact approach, engaging different sectors including parents, DSS, public health, military, faith community, evidence-based parenting program practitioners, early childhood educators, and more to build a community plan that reduces child maltreatment and creates the safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments required for families to thrive. We all have a role to play. We also know that there are many prevention and parenting programs built on evidence that leads to both a reduction in abuse and neglect and better outcomes for children, and have the added bonus of a great return on investment for taxpayers. We know, for example, from studies at the Washington State Institute for Public Policy that the benefit to cost ratio for PPP, a public health approach to help all parents, is $8.14 for every dollar invested. Evidence-based parenting programs, from nurse-family partnership to incredible years to strengthening families and healthy families, have all positive returns for taxpayers. Sergeant Peggy Smith with the Fayetteville Police Department noted at the forum that neighbors are reluctant to share information that can help a family in crisis, and many do not know how to recognize or report child abuse and neglect. The SOAR Committee's plan is to engage all sectors of the community to embrace the role they can play to strengthen families and keep children safe. As stated in the series, solutions come when a community decides to make a problem a priority. Not only making prevention a priority, but building a plan to make it a reality is a huge first step for Cumberland County and our state. To paraphrase Benjamin Franklin, without a plan for prevention, we are effectively planning to fail our children. The Cumberland County Child Abuse Prevention Plan holds the potential to be a model for the state, but more importantly, to change the outcomes for our children. Investing upstream in kids and families is good for our community, good for the economy, good for our future workforce, and good for our bottom lines. We're hopeful.
Let's turn and look at Dr. Graham's column for today. The question comes from Dr. Graham. The other day I decided to make a list of my main faults so I could begin to do something about them, but I got discouraged because I don't see how I can ever overcome them. How can I become a better person? You are, I suspect, this is his answer, you are, I suspect, discovering one of life's hardest lessons. Even when we know how we ought to live, we still lack the inner strength to do it. Even the Apostle Paul admitted, I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. That's in Romans chapter 7. Why is this? The reason is because within each one of us is a spiritual disease that we cannot get rid of on our own. This disease is what the Bible calls sin, and it's like a deadly cancer that weakens us and keeps us from living the way we should. But it's also a disease we cannot cure on our own. We may be able to change in some ways, we may overcome a few bad habits, but sin holds us back and it frustrates our every effort. Is there any solution? Yes, and that solution is Jesus. He came into the world to free us from both the penalty and the power of sin. Sin's penalty is death and eternal separation from God. Sin's power keeps us from living the way we should. But by his death and resurrection, Jesus overcame both the penalty and power of sin for us. As you have discovered, we cannot overcome sin's power on our own. This is why I invite you to turn to Christ and open your heart and life to his life-changing power. The Bible says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and that's Romans 12:2. Great advice from Dr. Graham. This next article is a hurricane-related article. A neighbor was the first to tell, this comes from Dallas, a neighbor was the first to tell Paige Kane that her landlord had posted an eviction notice on the door of her flooded apartment in Port Arthur, Texas. The 26-year-old was more than 300 miles away with no car, sleeping in a Dallas shelter for evacuees escaping Harvey's floodwaters. The mother of four had no way to get back in the 5 days the eviction notice gave her to remove her belongings before they would be heaped on the curb. Rental housing has been a concern in many cities in Texas and Florida after hurricanes Harvey and Irma flooded tens of thousands of homes. Texas renters have complained of difficulties getting out of leases on damaged properties, short timelines for evictions, and trouble finding affordable rentals because landlords have a glut of tenants to choose from. In Florida, advocates worry rebuilding efforts after Irma are forcing out mobile home park residents who rent coveted land in the Florida Keys. In Texas, housing advocacy groups in Houston, Port Arthur, and other hard-hit cities are fielding complaints. Lone Star Legal Aid, which provides free civil legal services to low-income residents in parts of the state, has received nearly 100 complaints from renters since the storm. Complaints that can encompass issues dozens of renters have at one complex. It's unconscionable, but there were landlords who would not extend the rent deadlines, even as Harvey hit on August 25th, days before rent was due for many, said John Hindenberger, co-director of the Texas Low-Income Housing Information Service. Texas statutes, which often favor landlords in disputes, require tenants to take landlords to court for rent reductions or lease terminations, something that can seem monumental when courthouses are flooded, cars destroyed, and incomes lost. Florida has no blanket policy governing how late rental payments or evictions should be handled after storms, according to the Florida Apartment Association, which represents owners, developers, and property managers for about 600,000 units. An association representative didn't know of any landlords refusing to allow renters to break leases, but that doesn't address renters who want their apartments repaired. They haven't done anything, not even put a tarp on the roof, said Liliana Caminero, a 54-year-old nurse who lived in a second-floor apartment in Miami that suffered extensive roof damage. An inspector told her the place was uninhabitable and covered in black mildew, so she was forced to find another rental. In the Florida Keys, which took the brunt of Hurricane Irma, half of up to 15,000 residential homes damaged or destroyed were mobile homes. Jose Fons, an advocacy director for Monroe County for the Legal Services of Greater Miami, said landowners have started evicting trailer owners or renters from their lots, saying they are having problems with access to utilities. There's a fear that some of them will change the use of the land so that there are no longer mobile home parks, said Fons, a concern shared by U.S. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. Not all the trailers are uninhabitable. Fons said landowners are giving tenants short time frames to remove trailers. Florida officials have not asked park owners or landlords for leniency, unlike Texas. Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner urged landlords to waive late fees for September and give more time to vacate uninhabitable apartments. At the same time, groups that track rental stock say they've seen a decrease in areas of Houston that stay dry and an increase in average rents. Texas renters have also complained about landlords demanding rent for unlivable apartments and threatening to keep security deposits or put a mark on the renters' credit reports if they don't pay. Texas law says either the landlord or the tenant can decide that a space is unlivable because of a flood or a fire, but the law doesn't clearly outline what happens if they disagree. As for the short timelines for evictions, 5-day notices, while allowed, have been applied in ways that don't comply with Texas law, said Rich Thomason, litigation director for Lone Star Legal Aid. Landlords cannot move tenants' property without going to court. This is unlike my previous experience with flooding, Tomlinson said. A lot of landlords this time have sent out those 5-day eviction notices. I don't remember them doing that in the previous floods, and certainly not like this. Lone Star Legal Aid has filed a handful of legal actions in the last month, including a request for an order prohibiting an apartment management company from putting Kane's belongings on the street before she could get back. Wow. Let's turn now to an article regarding the NCAA investigation at the University of North Carolina, which has been going on now for 7 years. Friday the 13th proved to be a lucky day for the University of North Carolina athletic program. An investigation into academic irregularities that has plagued UNC for more than 7 years came to a final and controversial conclusion Friday when the NCAA Committee on Infractions couldn't conclude paper or no-show courses in the formerly named Department of Afro-American Studies violated the organization's rules. Even while expressing frustration with UNC, the Committee on Infractions Chief Hearing Officer Greg Sankey said the National Collegiate Athletic Association could not act because the courses were open to the entire student body as well as athletes. While student athletes likely benefited from the so-called paper courses offered by North Carolina, the information available in the record did not establish that the courses were solely created, offered, and maintained as an orchestrated effort to benefit student athletes, said Sankey, who is also commissioner of the SEC. The panel is troubled by the university's shifting positions about whether academic fraud occurred on its campus and the credibility of the Cadwalader report, which it distanced itself from after initially supporting the findings. However, NCAA policy is clear. The NCAA defers to its member schools to determine whether academic fraud occurred, and ultimately the panel is bound to making decisions within the rules set by the membership. The decision enabled North Carolina to avoid major sanctions that could have resulted from the NCAA's most serious allegation of failure to exercise institutional control and failure to monitor the conduct and administration of athletics programs. At the core of the NCAA's case were courses in what was then known as the Department of African American Studies. As far back as 1992, Department Secretary Deborah Crowder created classes in which there was little evidence of classroom teaching, even though they were supposed to be lecture courses. The Raleigh News and Observer later reported that the majority of those enrolled in more than 40 no-show classes were athletes. But because of the fact all the courses were open and taken by regular students, and in part to Crowder's testimony before the Infractions Committee in May that she treated all students the same, the NCAA didn't consider the classes extra benefits for athletes. The record did not establish that the university created and offered the courses as part of a systematic effort to benefit only student athletes, Sankey said. Sankey added during a teleconference Friday that the NCAA also is limited by its own bylaws that rely on member institutions to determine academic fraud on their campuses. While UNC admitted the courses failed to meet its standards, it declared work was assigned, completed, and graded under a professor's guidelines. I think it's important to understand the panel is in no way supporting what happened, he said. What happened was troubling, and I think that's been acknowledged, but we applied membership bylaws to the facts. Sankey said the NCAA will present the findings of its investigation to the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, which is the agency charged with granting accreditation to UNC and about 13,000 other public and private schools. UNC's Carol Folt, who became chancellor in 2013 as the investigation was beginning to unfold, said Friday's decision wasn't a time for celebration, but it would serve as motivation to continue the university's efforts to correct the academic issues that prompted the investigation. We long ago accepted responsibility for what happened in the past, she said during an afternoon teleconference. I don't think any president or chancellor in the country would want to go through this. We have made every effort to grow from this, and I think we have in extraordinary ways. We all believe Carolina is in a better place. The facts about the academic irregularities might not have even come to light if not for former Tar Heel football defensive lineman Marvin Austin, whose tweet while partying in South Florida in July 2010 triggered an NCAA investigation into the football program about agents providing improper benefits. During that investigation, which eventually led the NCAA sanctions against the football program, the discovery that a tutor provided improper help on papers for football players in the no-show classes instigated the academic fraud probe. Now, after a long investigation and final answer that even Sankey admits will be controversial, North Carolina can move forward. UNC officials were pleased with the outcome of the investigation. We had some things occur that we're not proud of, UNC Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham said, but we have been very open and transparent in attempting to follow the various processes we've been involved in. But sometimes the behavior you're not proud of doesn't quite fit into the bylaw or rules. That's what we've been talking about for 5 years. We're not proud of the behavior, but we didn't think we violated any bylaw of the NCAA.
The next article is the Dear Abby column. And this is from Stay Classy in the Midwest. Dear Abby, my almost ex-wife filed for divorce while asking me to work on myself. She refused counseling despite our 17 years of marriage and 2 children, ages 12 and 10. While I was out of our family home at her request, she was dating a married, unemployed man who has a child on his own. My wife then moved into a rental house. She and the boyfriend are still legally married because the divorces are not final. Now she's imposing him on our children at the rental house. She also brings him to their sporting events, even though it makes the children and other teen parents uncomfortable. Dear Stay Classy, please continue to be as supportive of your children as you can be. You should also talk to your lawyer about their custody, because your wife is going to have her hands full supporting this new man in her life, which means she may have less time to spend with them. Dear Abby, this is from the new kid at school. I'm an 11-year-old girl. I just started middle school, 6th grade. Although I'm new to the school, I knew 2 girls from before. They are very nice and have accepted me. The problem is that they are leaders of 2 separate groups, and during lunch and recess, they want me to sit with them. How do I do this without hurting any feelings? For the time, dear new kid, for the time being, alternate sitting with each group. Be friendly to everyone, regardless of which group they belong to. And while you're at it, do the same with classmates who aren't members of either group. In time, you will figure out where you are more comfortable. And from the Fayetteville Observer, merit and demerit page for today. Merit. For NBA legend and Charlotte Hornets owner Michael Jordan, who is donating $7 million to start medical clinics that he hopes will help provide more care for at-risk communities in Charlotte. His donation, his largest ever, will fund 2 Novant Health Michael Jordan family clinics. Jordan, a North Carolina native, said, "It is my hope that these clinics will help provide a brighter and healthier children for children and the families they serve." Jordan's spokeswoman said he was moved to establish the clinics by the study that showed poor children in Charlotte face the worst odds in the nation's top 50 cities of getting out of poverty. That's the same study that showed Fayetteville ranked last among all the cities. Novant says the clinics will include care in traditional medicine, as well as behavioral health, physical therapy, social work, oral health, and family planning. They will serve the parts of the community that have little or no health care. Among other benefits, Novant says the clinics may cut the use of hospital emergency rooms for primary care by 68% and decrease hospitalization by 37% for residents of those from impoverished neighborhoods. Note to Fayetteville area philanthropist. Michael Jordan just shined a spotlight on what we need to do here. Demerit. For the apparent attempts by a company in the Raleigh area to entice residents near the Chemours plant to buy water filter systems. Residents who live near the plant off NC 87 on the Cumberland-Bladen County line have reported getting envelopes in the mail saying community water test. It includes a survey that warns about Gen X, the chemical used in making Teflon that is produced at the plant and which has been found in the Cape Fear River and in some public and private wells in the plant's vicinity. Researchers have linked the chemical to testicular, pancreatic, and liver cancer in animals, but don't know if it has the same effect on humans. The letter offers a free water test if residents return the survey. A Fayetteville Public Works Commission spokeswoman says some Fayetteville residents who live upstream from the Chemours plant have gotten similar mailings. The ones who returned the questionnaire and then submitted test samples were notified that their water contained Gen X, arsenic, and other chemicals. Their information appeared misleading, the PWC's spokeswoman said, and we wanted to remind customers about our drinking water standards and caution them before making costly commitments to products that haven't shown to remove these contaminants. Turning an environmental emergency into a marketing opportunity is not a good way to do business. And a merit for the State Department of Transportation, which will hold a public meeting from 5 to 7 p.m. on October 24th in the Dunn Community Center to discuss upcoming construction on I-95 near exits 70, 71, 72, 73, 75, and 77. The work will involve extending entrance and exit ramps and raising and lengthening bridges. The ramps and bridges are old and don't meet contemporary standards. They can be dangerous. The work is expected next year. Meanwhile, we're still waiting for the state to decide how it would deal with the whole of I-95 through North Carolina. Much of it is old and in poor condition, especially in the two-lane segments. It is far below the capacity needed for the heavy volumes of traffic that the East Coast's busiest interstate highway sees. A few years ago, the DOT was taking a serious look at funding an I-95 reconstruction by turning it into a toll road, arguing that tolls were a good way to force the heavy out-of-state presence on the highway to help pay for the work. But that set off a political volatile uproar from businesses along the highway, as well as in-state businesses that depend on the road for transportation. The toll plan promptly disappeared, and so did public discussion of how the interstate will get the upgrades it needs. And a merit for Rowan County and the First Liberty Institute, which is representing the county in court, which will ask the U.S. Supreme Court to review a Court of Appeals ruling that bars the county commissioners from opening their meetings with exclusively Christian prayers. This is a long-running dispute for the commissioners, who have refused to heed the generally accepted guidance that prayer at government meetings should be non-denominational or at least representative of many different religions. In July, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond ruled against the county. The judges said that prayer isn't unconstitutional, but the commissioner's insistence on exclusively Christian prayers is. The judges said that violates the First Amendment by establishing Christianity as the preferred religion. We believe the appeals court decision is correct and that county should recognize that it serves people who practice many religions and some who practice no religion at all. But last month, the Sixth Circuit Court in Cincinnati ruled that exclusively Christian prayers are constitutional. That case originated in Michigan. The only way to settle this is to hand it up to the highest court in the land. It's time to lay off this often nasty controversy to rest for good.
Okay, let's turn to an article about the fires in California, which have been really horrific this week. From Santa Rosa, a fifth day of desperate firefighting in California wine country brought a glimmer of hope Friday as crews batting the flames reported their first progress toward containing the massive blazes, and hundreds more firefighters poured in to join the effort. 17 large fires were still burning across northern California, with more than 9,000 firefighters attacking the flames. The emergency is not over and we continue to work at it, but we are seeing some great progress, said the state's Emergency Operations Director Mark Ghilarducci. Over the past 24 hours, crews arrived from Nevada, Washington, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, North and South Carolina, Oregon, and Arizona. Other teams came from as far away as Canada and Australia. Wow. Since igniting Sunday in spots across 8 counties, the blazes have killed 31 people, destroyed at least 3,500 homes and businesses, and reduced entire neighborhoods to ash and rubble. With hundreds still reported missing, the death toll is expected to keep rising. Individual fires, including the Oakland Hills blaze in 1991, killed more people than any one of the current blazes, but no collection of simultaneous fires in California ever led to so many deaths. Dozens of search and rescue personnel at a mobile home park in Santa Rosa carried out the grim task Friday of searching for the remains of residents who did not escape in time. Fire tore through Santa Rosa early Monday, leaving only a brief window for people to flee. Officers recovered bone fragments from one person Friday morning, and there was a high probability they would find more, Sonoma County Sheriff Sergeant Dave Thompson said. There may be 2 or 3 more bodies in the leveled remains of the mobile home park. The influx of outside help offered critical relief to firefighters who have been working with little rest since the blazes started. It's like pulling teeth to get firefighters and law enforcement to disengage from what they are doing out there, CAL FIRE's Napa Chief Barry Bierman said. They are truly passionate about what they are doing to help the public, but resources are coming in. That's why you are seeing the progress we're making. In addition to manpower, equipment deliveries have poured in. Crews were using 840 fire engines from across California and another 170 sent from around the country. Before dawn, 4 fire trucks rolled out of Eastside Fire and Rescue in Issaquah, Washington, part of 3 King County strike teams. The 50 firefighters and 16 vehicles rolled south for an 18-day deployment. These guys are trained in wildland fires, and this is what they love to do, Eastside Fire Chief Jeff Clark said. Although they pitch in elsewhere in Washington and Oregon, Eastside has not sent crews to California since 2007. 2 of the largest fires in Napa and Sonoma counties were at least 25% contained by Friday, which marked significant progress, said Ken Pimlott, Chief of the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. But he cautioned that crews would face more gusty winds, low humidity, and higher temperatures. Those conditions were expected to take hold later Friday and persist into the weekend. Wow. This is an article out of Kennesaw, Georgia. A new battle line is formed in the national debate over Civil War flags and symbols, this time at a Georgia school not far from a mountaintop where Confederate soldiers fired their cannons at Union troops more than a century ago. The school near Kennesaw Mountain last month invited 5th graders to dress up as characters from the Civil War. A white student dressed as a plantation owner said to a 10-year-old black classmate, "You are my slave," said the black child's parent, Corey Davis. "What I want them to understand is the pain it caused my son," she said of her child who did not dress up that day. "This is bringing them back to a time when people were murdered, when people died, and when people owned people." Davis recorded an emotional video in which she explains how she was affected by what had happened to her son. It has attracted about 70,000 views on Facebook. The distraught mother said she met with school officials but was dismayed when they refused to promise that they would never conduct a class in that way again. The issue could come to a head in a couple of weeks when Davis plans to bring it up at a regularly scheduled school board meeting. No student was required to dress in a period attire, and any student that did so was not instructed, not required to dress in any specific attire, school system spokesman John Stafford said in a brief statement. Cobb County school officials haven't said whether the annual Civil War Day will continue next year at Big Shanty Intermediate School. However, the note sent home to parents before the event said it creates a more realistic simulation when dressing in Civil War clothing. Its suggestions include overalls, which Davis believes could have been meant to represent the clothing worn by slaves, and dark pants and white button-down shirts. White button-down shirts have become synonymous with demonstrators protesting the removal of Confederate statues in recent months. They were worn, for example, by some of the white nationalists who staged a rally in Charlottesville, Virginia that led to violent clashes in August. Communities around the country have removed Confederate monuments under pressure from those who they say honor a regime that enslaved African Americans. The debate over such symbols intensified after a self-proclaimed white supremacist who had posed in a photo with the Confederate battle flag fatally shot 9 black parishioners in a church in Charleston, South Carolina in 2015. And it has shown little signs of waning since the Charlottesville clashes that left 1 woman dead. Be creative and use your resources to ensure that your costume is as accurate as possible, the Georgia schools note informed parents. It included a small picture of a man in Civil War dress, what appears to be one of several flags used by the Confederate States of America. If they're requiring that the costume be as accurate as possible, some kid is going to come to school dressed as a plantation owner, Davis said in her video. My son is going to be looked upon as a slave at that school. Okay, and then just other brief articles from around the state, news and information. From Charlotte, 3 gang members from North Carolina have been found guilty for their roles in killing a couple in retaliation in their South Carolina home. Federal prosecutors said a jury returned guilty verdicts for racketeering Friday against Randall Hankins, Nona Adoma, and Akeem McDonald. Authorities say the 3 were in a gang that ordered the killing of Doug and Debbie London at their home near Lake Wiley, South Carolina in 2014. Doug London had shot gang member Jamel Curitan as he tried to rob a Charlotte mattress store at gunpoint 5 months before the killings. Authorities say the wounded robber was a gang member who ordered the couple killed. Curitan pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. All 3 defendants could face life in prison when they are sentenced later. Also from Charlotte, police say they have arrested a convicted felon who had a gun battle in a parking lot that ended with a bullet shattering a school bus window. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police spokesman Keith Treatley said 28-year-old Nelson Handy was arrested Friday morning after leading police on a chase. He is charged with 20 counts of shooting into occupied property, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and other charges. Treatley says police are still looking for the other man. Police released surveillance video from the gas station that shows the 2 men arguing Thursday morning before the shooting. Police say none of the 19 children on the bus was hurt, while the driver did suffer minor injuries from broken glass. Jail records didn't list the lawyer for handling. From Swansboro, authorities say the mayor of a small town has been arrested after failing to pay estate taxes for 5 years. The State Department of Revenue says 61-year-old Swansboro Mayor John Chadwick intentionally failed to file tax returns from 2011 to 15. Authorities say, along with being mayor of the Onslow County town, Chadwick also works for Cedar Point Landscaping. Chadwick told the Daily News of Jacksonville that he has struggled financially for the past several years. He says he is cooperating with the Revenue Department and hopes to resolve the back taxes soon. Chadwick's name will remain on the ballot for next year as the early voting begins, and Swansboro Town Manager Scott Chase said he is talking to lawyers about what happens next with the mayor. From High Point, authorities believe a house fire was started by a woman who was found dead there. Surrey County Emergency Medical Services Director John Shelton told WGHP that 39-year-old Lisa K. White Johnson had already died before firefighters pulled her from the Dobson area home Wednesday afternoon. Johnson lived in the house with her husband and 2 teenage children, but no one else was inside during the fire. Shelton says investigators determined the fire was intentionally set by Johnson and that it began on a love seat in the living room. She was found in a bathroom. Johnson's body will be taken to Winston-Salem Hospital for autopsy that will verify if the fire had caused her death. And from Sanford, a custodian at a middle school has been charged after someone found a camera in a faculty bathroom. Lee County deputies tell local media outlets 28-year-old Tony Waddell Feaster of Sanford was arrested Wednesday and charged with secretly peeping using a photographic device. That day, deputies say a staffer found a cell phone that was actively recording video inside a faculty bathroom at East Lee Middle School. Authorities said the staff member who found the cell phone was the only one who appeared to have been filmed, and no students were captured on camera. Feaster was fired after the camera was found. He was jailed on $5,000 secured bond, as it wasn't known if he had an attorney.
Here's a local piece of news. 2 teens are held in vehicle break-ins. Fayetteville police have arrested 2 of 3 teenagers suspected in break-ins of multiple vehicles at Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. Abnum Shane, 17, of the 2900 block of Well Drive, is charged with 6 counts of breaking and entering a motor vehicle, 3 counts each of misdemeanor larceny and possession of stolen goods, 2 counts of injury to personal property, and 1 count each of felony larceny and possession of stolen goods, according to police. His bail was set at $40,000. A juvenile suspect also is in custody, police said. Detectives are looking for Joshua Earl, 17, who faces charges in the case. The 3 are accused of breaking into at least 24 vehicles at the Owen Drive Hospital's employee parking lot on October 5th and 7th. Items stolen from vehicles included 2 handguns, money, electronics, and purses. The hospital increased patrols of parking areas and boosted other security measures. Anyone with information about the case is asked to call Detective C. Hudson at 910-703-1058 or Crime Stoppers at 483-TIPS. And on a national article out of Washington from the Associated Press, President Donald Trump will nominate a climate change denier with ties to the fossil fuel industry to serve as top environmental advisor. The White House on Thursday announced the selection of Kathleen Hartnett White of Texas to serve as chair of the Council on Environmental Quality. White served under former Texas Governor Rick Perry, now Trump's Energy Secretary, for 6 years on a commission overseeing the state environmental agency. White was fiercely critical of what she called the Obama administration's imperial EPA and pushed back against stricter limits on air and water pollution. She is a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a conservative think tank that has received funding from fossil fuel companies that include Koch Industries, ExxonMobil, and Chevron. In a 2014 policy paper titled Fossil Fuels, the Moral Case, White praised the burning of fuel and petroleum for vastly improved living conditions across the world and credited fossil fuels with ending slavery. She also likened the work of mainstream climate scientists to the dogmatic claims of ideologues and clerics. White is a member of the CO2 Coalition, a group that seeks to educate thought leaders, policymakers, and the public about the important contribution made by carbon dioxide to our lives and the economy. In an op-ed published by the Hill newspaper last year, White took aim at Obama-era policies that sought to slow global warmings by limiting carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants. Climate scientists point to the rising concentrations of carbon emitted into the atmosphere through burning fossil fuels, with a corresponding increase in global average temperatures. The truth is that our bodies, bones, and blood are built of carbon, White wrote. Carbon dioxide is a necessary nutrient for plant life, acting as a catalyst for the most essential energy conversion process on planet Earth, photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide is an odorless, invisible, harmless, and completely natural gas, lacking any characteristic of a pollutant. A native of Kansas, White holds degrees from Stanford University in East Asian Studies and Comparative Literature. The Council on Environmental Quality coordinates federal environmental efforts and works with agencies and White House offices in the development of environmental policies and initiatives. According to its congressional mandate, the Council is to encourage productive and enjoyable harmony between man and his environment and promote efforts which will prevent or eliminate damage to the environment and biosphere.
Take a look at a couple more articles in the few minutes that we have remaining. This comes from Washington. President Donald Trump's abrupt move to cut off federal payments to insurers jolted America's health care and political world to life on Friday, threatening to boost premiums for millions, disrupt insurance markets, and shove Republicans into a renewed civil war over their efforts to shred Obamacare. Defiant Democrats, convinced they have important leverage, promised to press for a bipartisan deal to restore the money by year's end. That drive could split the GOP. On one side, pragmatists seeking to avoid political damage from hurting consumers. On the other, conservatives demanding a major weakening of the Affordable Care Act as the price for returning the money. The American people will know exactly where to place the blame, declared Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, all but daring Trump to aggravate what could be a major issue in the 2018 congressional elections. The money goes to companies for lowering out-of-pocket costs like co-payments and deductibles for low and middle-income customers. It will cost about $7 billion this year and help more than 6 million people. Ending the payments would affect insurers because President Barack Obama's law requires them to reduce their poor customers' costs. Carriers are likely to recoup the lost money by increasing 2018 premiums for people buying their own health insurance policies. The National Association for Insurance Commissioners estimates that Trump's move would produce a 12 to 15% upsurge in premiums, while the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has put the figure at 20%. That's on top of premium increases from growing medical costs. Experts say the political instability over Trump's effort to undermine Obama's health care law could also prompt more insurers to leave markets. As Trump frequently points out, next year about half of all U.S. counties will have only one insurer on Obamacare's online marketplaces, up from the one-third of counties with one carrier in 2017. Trump relished his latest blow against the law that he pledged to repeal during his presidential campaign, only to see the effort crash in the GOP-run Senate this summer. He's long derided the subsidies as bailouts to insurers, even though the payments and the cost reductions for consumers are required by law. Scrapping of subsidies would affect millions more consumers in states won by Trump last year, including Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi, than in states won by Democrat Hillary Clinton. Nearly 70% of the 6 million who benefited from the cost-sharing subsidies are in states that voted for Republicans. Congress, they forgot what their pledges were, Trump told conservative activists at the Values Voters Summit, recalling GOP candidates' repeated vows to repeal Obama's law. So we're going a little different route, but you know what? In the end, it's going to be just as effective, and maybe it will even be better. He later reiterated his belief that the move would pressure Democrats to bargain over major changes in the law and said there's going to be time to negotiate health care that's going to be good for everybody. Another related article from Washington, or not an article from Washington, not related. President Donald Trump on Friday angrily accused Iran of violating the landmark 2015 International Nuclear Accord, blaming the Iranians for a litany of sinister behavior and hitting their main military wing with anti-terror penalties. But Trump, breaking his campaign pledge to rip up the agreement, did not pull the U.S. out of or reimpose nuclear sanctions. He still might, he was quick to add. For now, he's tossing the issue to Congress and the other nations in the seven-country accord, telling lawmakers to toughen the law that governs U.S. participation and calling on the other parties to fix a series of deficiencies. Those include the scheduled expiration of key restrictions under sunset provisions that began to kick in 2025, as well as the omission of provisions on ballistic missile testing and terrorism. Without the fixes, Trump warned, he would likely pull the U.S. out of the deal, which he has called the worst in U.S. history, and slap previously lifted U.S. sanctions back into place. That would probably be a fatal blow for the seven-party accord. Our participation can be canceled by me as president at any time, Trump declared in a carefully delivered speech read from a teleprompter in the diplomatic reception room at the White House. He later added, speaking of Congress, they may come back with something that's very satisfactory to me, and if they don't within a very short period of time, I'll terminate the deal. Under U.S. law, Trump faces a Sunday deadline to certify to Congress whether Iran is complying with the accord. That notification must take place every 90 days, a timetable that Trump detests. Since taking office, he has twice reluctantly certified that Iran is fulfilling its commitments. On Friday, he said he would not do so again. Trump alone cannot actually terminate the accord, which lifted sanctions on Iran in exchange for concessions regarding its nuclear program. But withdrawing the U.S. could render the deal virtually meaningless. That would be risky, though, and could badly damage U.S. credibility in future international negotiations. The accord was struck after 18 months of negotiations between the Obama administration, Iran, Britain, China, France, Germany, Russia, and the European Union, and been endorsed by a unanimous vote in the UN Security Council. Trump's main national security aides have all argued for staying in the deal. So have key allies in Europe who are leery of altering an accord that they believe has prevented Iran from assembling an arsenal of atomic weapons. Overseas, reaction to Friday's speech was swift. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said that his country would continue to stick to the nuclear deal and that the U.S. was isolating itself, more lonely than ever, by condemning the accord. Indeed, the leaders of Britain, Germany, and France urged Trump in a joint statement not to do anything rash. We encourage the U.S. administration and Congress to consider the implications to the security of the U.S. and its allies before taking any steps that might undermine the deal, such as reimposing sanctions on Iran lifted under the agreement. Still, they added, independent of the deal, we need to make sure that our collective wider concerns are being addressed. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised Trump and said the U.S. president had created an opportunity to fix this bad deal and roll back Iran's aggression. Netanyahu has long warned that the accord failed to address Iran's support for militant groups who act against Israel. Trump opened his speech by reciting a long list of grievances with Iran dating back to the '79 Islamic Revolution and the seizure of the U.S. Embassy and American hostages in Tehran. He then noted terrorist attacks against Americans and American allies committed by Iranian proxies such as Hezbollah and Iran's ongoing ballistic missile test. We cannot and will not make this certification that Iran is complying with the accord, he said. We will not continue down a path whose predictable conclusion is more violence, more terror, and the very real threat of Iran's nuclear breakout. But decertifying the deal stops well short of pulling out and simply moves the issues over to Congress. Lawmakers now have 60 days to decide whether to put the accord's previous sanctions back into place, modify them, or do nothing. Republicans face a heavy lift in rallying GOP lawmakers and Democrats behind legislation that would make the accord more stringent and please Trump. Some GOP senators, like Marco Rubio of Florida, question whether the pact can be fixed. Further complicating matters, the GOP lawmaker who will be at the center of what's sure to be a stormy debate is Bob Corker of Tennessee, who recently compared Trump's White House to an adult daycare center. Our leaders in Washington. Okay, we've come to the end of our time today. This has been Stuart and Beth Walters reading for you from today's issue of the Fayetteville Observer. There will be other programming that will follow us today. We hope you all have a wonderful day. God bless you and take care.
Magazine at 4:30 p.m. Special edition. And at 5 o'clock, our audio description program.
What a difference a day made.
March 21st, 1983 was a day that definitely made a difference. That day was the inaugural broadcast of the Triangle Radio Reading Service. And today you can make a difference. Join the 1983 Society and make a contribution toward our future. It's easy and tax deductible. Call us at 832-5138 or visit our website at www.trianglereadingservice.org.
She's helping now. Okay. Uh-oh. Turn it off. I'm sorry.